We're live. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Data Optimization Summit. Can everyone hear me? We'll try that again because I didn't hear any response. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That's better. I'm Abby Smith, and I am the Executive Champion at FAA for NOTAM Modernization. I am so grateful for all the people that are here in our live audience, as well as for all of you that are watching from live stream on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Before we get started with the program, just some quick announcements. We are a safety organization after all, so let me tell you where the emergency exits are located. The emergency exits are located both out that door, down the hall, and then down the stairs, and we'll meet right outside on the terrace that you can see as you're walking outside. Or if you're on this side of the room, the exit is right by the elevator, and you go straight down the stairs. Same thing, we'll meet on the terrace immediately outside. Also, for your comfort, there are restrooms located out of either exit, and we have coffee service and some snacks over here. We are live streaming on the internet, and as a courtesy, you will see if you're in the middle of the room that there's like a taped runway. If you need to walk across that, that's fine. Just don't linger unless you want to become a new YouTube influencer. Might be a little strange. Let's see. Also, if any of you have a need to step out for a phone call or just need to caucus, immediately out the door over here, the next room is called the Pentagon Room, and it's a room with some tables and some quiet space for you, should you require it. Okay, on with the program. I'm really delighted that to kick off our event today, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer of the Air Traffic Organization, Mr. Tim Morrell, has a couple words for us. Tim, thank you so much.
Thanks, Abby, and thank you all for being here. First of all, on behalf of Administrator Dixon, who's in Dubai at the air show right now, and our Chief Operating Officer, Terry Bristol, who's at a Canzo event in Carousel. I'm kind of jealous of that, but so on behalf of both of them, welcome, and we're very happy to have you here. As many of you know, Secretary Chow has made it a priority for safety and innovation throughout all the transportation system, and certainly we take that to heart within the FAA. Administrator Dixon certainly has that as part of his priorities. In addition, his main push with us is engagement with industry. And seeing you all here helps us all realize that goal. And it couldn't be more critical when it comes to safety and industry engagement than when we get together to talk about the NOTAM system. It is overdue. Certainly we engage with all aviation stakeholders on everything aviation related and air navigation services provided across the system. We certainly want to maintain that level of engagement, but NOTAMs are long overdue for overhaul and for some modernization, and certainly we look to you on how we can do better than we're doing, right? We do not have all the answers. We have an incredible amount of data, and that's why we're happy to have you here and share that information, and maybe together we can figure out the best way to utilize that data and serve all of us, again, in the interest of safety. So thank you for your time. We're really looking for everyone to play all out, and Abby and company are here to really engage you all, and thank you again.
Thank you, Tim. So if you'll notice on the screens, we have a polling tool that we're using today to engage our live studio audience, as well as the people that are live streaming on the internet. So if you will all, I can't believe I'm going to ask you to go to your phones, but go to your phones or whatever mobile device you choose to use and go to slido.com. And then when you get to slido.com, you're going to, and the hashtag, put Data Ops Summit in. And the first question, just to warm up the room, is what city are you from? So you will see that right now there's a lot of people from Washington, D.C. Well, as you're doing that, and we'll see where we land, welcome to Washington, D.C., or as I like to call it, the District of Champions, home of the champion Washington Mystics, home of the champion Washington Capitals, and the Washington Nationals. Sorry to all of you who We're in the playoffs and did so well. We're really excited about that. Anyway, okay, on with the show. So from the first poll, you can see we've got people from all over the place, including we've got people from Germany, we have people from Canada, we have Poland, Melbourne, Montreal, London, Naples, Petersburg. Pretty exciting. So it's including the people here, it's great to know that this is not just an FAA problem. This is all of our problems that we're here to work on. I hope you found that easy. I can fat finger in the Slido app, and I think it's really going to help with ideation. So we're going to be using that later to check in. So can you advance the slide? So we've got a busy day. So today, here we go. Sorry, gang. You're going to hear from FAA executives like Nitesh Mantikoth, our Chief Data Officer, on what's going on with aeronautical information and the NOTAM modernization effort. Drew Zachary from the Census Bureau is going to show us some of the best practices on what they've done with data using user-centered design. And we have 6 system demos, both external to FAA and internally how our data sets are organized and orchestrated to inspire this afternoon's ideation session. This is when we turn it over to all of you and to help you tell us what you want to see with our aeronautical information and our notices to airmen data. We're going to wrap by 4:30, and before we dive into our first session, let's do another quick poll to see how you want to consume NOTAMs in the future. So go to your Slido app, and one word, how do you want to consume NOTAMs in the future? So if Nitesh, Jeannie, and Jose can join me. You want me to sit?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeannie Schiffer. I'm the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Communications here at the Census Bureau. I used to be at the Census Bureau, at the Federal Aviation Administration. As Abby mentioned, data is certainly important. It's certainly one of the most important assets that the government has. It helps communities. It helps customers, it helps stakeholders, and it helps people who come from places who sound like me. It makes us safer, and it makes us smarter. And as a government communications professional, it's my responsibility to make sure the data we have is available to our stakeholders. And that's what we're here today to talk about. So you already know Abby, so she doesn't need to introduce herself. But we also have Nitesh Mantikoth and Jose Alfonso. So let's, Nitesh, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's incredible to work with Abby. Whenever she asks me to collaborate on anything, I jump at the opportunity. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the agency, have been for the past nearly 3 years. As you know, as Jeannie mentioned, data as a strategic asset is a government-wide goal, and so we have several initiatives associated with that. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of those thoughts today.
Jose?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Alfonso. I'm the Deputy Director for Aeronautical Information Services. What we do is terminal procedures for navigation and charts. We do all of the aeronautical information, meaning that we are the last point from the FAA that puts it out for our users, meaning you all, to absorb and use. And we also do all the charting for the procedures that are published in the NAS airways approaches and things like that.
Thank you. So let's get started with Abby. And just so the people in the room, I think you're very familiar with a lot of the acronyms we're going to throw out there. But for the people who are watching, you may not know what some of these acronyms mean. So I've got some cards up here. I'll be throwing them out to help define some of these acronyms. So, yeah, thank you. So I'll be calling the audibles over here. So Abby, tell us, what do you mean by NOTAM modernization?
So thank you, Jeannie. Cue the card. Notices to airmen, or NOTAMs, are really part and parcel of navigation. Because, as Jose alluded to, we've agreed as a world through the International Civil Aviation Organization Treaty that we update all of our aeronautical charts and data every chart cycle. As a result, though, we know that the National Airspace System is not static, and things happen all the time. So what do we do in between those times, in between those normal charting cycles, to keep things up to date? That's what a notice to airmen comes in. It says, oh, a navigational aid is not working. Oh, an instrument flight procedure has been taken out of service for some reason. Oh, there's an obstacle because a tower went up and didn't wait for the chart cycle to go up. These are all really important reasons to have a NOTAM. However, when NOTAMs got started, it was the age of the what? The teletype. And so that was in the 1920s. That was about the same time that the Nationals had won the World Series the last time, just by chance. But a lot's happened in the last 95 years. And while technology and flight operations and all the rest of the aviation industry has moved on, this format has kind of stayed static. And so we're at this crossroads time and a really important opportunity, because there are so many things changing at such a great speed, that we make sure that pilots, dispatchers, controllers, and anybody else that needs aeronautical information and notices to airmen can get it in a relevant, timely way.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Abby. Jose, speaking of NOTAMs, notice to airmen, what work streams are you leading for NOTAM modernization?
By default and being a part of Aeronautical Information Services, I touch just about all of them because they're all aeronautical information related. But mainly the ones that I'm leading is permanent NOTAMs and technical flight temporary flight restrictions. Those are the two that I'm leading. I'm also going to be part of the preferred departure routes and preferred arrival routes. That's one of the by default ones. So the two main ones are permanent NOTAMs and TFRs.
Thank you. Hey, Jeannie, I just realized, Jose, you asked Jose about Workstreams, so let me bump it up a notch again. So what are we doing specifically around NOTAM modernization? Well, there's 4 key things that we're doing. Number 1 is external stakeholder engagement. We can't do this without the people we serve. And so the fact that you're either here in person or you're here on the internet with us right now is part and parcel to that. I've had the honor to work with a group called the Aeronautical Information Services Reform Coalition. Yes, that is a mouthful. AIS Reform Coalition, whose chairman is Heidi Williams from NBAA, but also includes IATA, Airlines for America, ACI, NASEO, AAAE, ALPA, NATCA, PASS, AOPA, JetBlue, United, Delta, Southwest, and American Airlines. And I meet with them every month.
So I don't have cards for all of those. So just
Sorry,
have to backtrack
Sarah
on some of
is.
those.
I got you on the audibles. So anyway, they approached the FAA just over a year ago and said, "Hey, help us, because we need one single office where we can have go to for help, instead of going all over the place in the Federal Aviation Administration And they had well, Santa's laundry list, frankly. And then, so the stakeholder outreach is a really key important part. Another key important part is we have a lot of process improvement that we need to do, because just like the teletype hadn't progressed in 95 years, we had kind of let our processes languish. So there's a lot of internal work streams, and Jose started to talk about them, that we're doing on process improvement. Also, technology. We have a system, ready for the audibles, and I'm going to say the acronym so she can hold up the card, called FNS.
I got it. Hold on. Go ahead.
FNS, okay, it's Federal NOTAM System. And then we also have the United States NOTAM System, or USNS. We have two systems and we should have one. So we've got some technology improvements. We also have a requirement to have a single place for people to originate NOTAMs and a single place for distribution of NOTAMs. There's a lot of technology work to untangle the spaghetti, which you'll be hearing a little bit more about later. Lastly, we have a training and outreach, because we have a system and we need to make sure that the system, both internally for the people in the FAA that are running the National Airspace System and the people that are users, understand what our system is, how we're modernizing, and how they are involved in it. So when I say NOTAM modernization, it's all of that. And it is an honor to work with well over 70 direct touch points in the FAA and countless people that those people lead. So this is really all of us working together.
Thank you, Abby. Nitesh, as the Chief Data Officer, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that NOTAM modernization might encounter at the FAA, just from a data perspective?
How long do you have? No, so broadly speaking, data challenge, whether it is NOTAMs or something else, things are fairly common across the various domains we have. Think about it this way. These are safety critical systems, so folks are reluctant to change. So introducing change in a safe fashion, respecting all the work which went on before, but moving from all caps to something a little bit more readable. Love the capitals, so it's all caps, just because of that. That transition is the hard part, because there are a lot of existing investments, both internal and outside, that rely on the current mechanisms. So the safe transition from one set of use modes to the modern ones. The other aspect is that, now I'm not talking just about NOTAMs alone, even though NOTAMs also kind of exemplify this. When these things started, NOTAMs were probably a manageable number, but they have kind of ballooned in volume. That's true of all our data assets. Most of the data originally was meant for human consumption. Now we want machine-to-machine interactions and automated means of ingesting and processing and using them. So we have to keep up with that. I'm sure the 28-day chart cycles have a reason. Why 28? Why not 25 or whatever? All those things are remnants of how we did things manually. Those cannot be changed, but there's no reason why all these pieces of information cannot be more real-time and available more seamlessly throughout the system.
Thank you. Jose, can you tell us what you guys have accomplished so far? I mean, this has been a heavy lift, and a lot has gone on in a very short amount of time. Tell us what you've gotten done so far.
One of the things that we were approached with was the organizing of aeronautical information when it came to NOTAMs. So the biggest accomplishment so far is that we've been able to reorganize the U.S. NOTAM system under the Aeronautical Information Services umbrella, and that's in compliance now with the ICAO mandate that requires NOTAMs to be under Aeronautical Information Services. So that we did that in a relatively extremely short amount of time when you look at the federal government and how we work in organizing different offices from one organization to another. I think we did that, in about 6 months, if not less. It was just mind-boggling how we were able to do that. So that's been a big feather in our cap that we were able to do that. The other thing too is when we started the permanent NOTAM, we started digging into it. We discovered over 500 just permanent NOTAMs associated with NAVE-type field, runway lights and things of that nature. And we've been able to cancel 58% of those, and at the same time update the appropriate publication of chart which reflected that information. What does that do? It prevents a pilot from having to search the NOTAM for information that's required for them when they're flying in or out of an airfield. The other thing we did was, or what we're doing is working with the Office of Airports. Another one of the holes that we've discovered is there's a lot of folks that issued NOTAMs related to airports, and they lack the knowledge of closing the loop. And what I mean by closing the loop is if you're the airport owner and you have a permanent change at your location that warrants a NOTAM and warrants safety notification, then you're going to issue that notice to airmen. And if it's permanent, you're going to issue it under the permanent NOTAM category. So that, you do your job, it gets on the wire, then unfortunately you kind of forget about it. You don't know, or some of the folks don't realize that there's a loop that has to be closed in notifying us, Aeronautical Information Services, so that we could take appropriate action, one, to notify the stakeholders, you all, and then so we could finish up in updating the publications and we could remove that NOTAM, cancel it once that publication is published correctly. So we 58% of that, and we did that in a matter of also about 5 months. Quite a lift. During that time, we also held a working group with the appropriate organizations that are involved in that. And what we did was we went, I think this, what is it, soup to nuts? From the South, help me out here.
Yeah, soup to nuts, that's right.
So we started at A and went to Z. We evaluated and looked over all the procedures, all the directions and organizations that provide guidance. And we streamlined those, we updated those. That way everybody that's touching the permanent NOTAM is aware of the new process, and if they weren't, they are now. And we're still evaluating that because it's not completely finished. So that's an ongoing process, but we've come a long way from where we are with that. Talked about that. We're also, with the permanent NOTAMs, we're also leveraging what we call co-production with the National Geospatial Agency, with our Department of Defense sister agency. And what we do is we leverage off each other's capabilities. And the best part of that is at no cost, because we have an agreement with the Department of Defense, with NGA, that we will share information and gain efficiencies through that relationship. And that's
Thank
pretty
you.
much.
Thank you. Abby, if I could ask you, talk a little bit about some of the conversations and outreach that you've had with airport operators as well as the GA community when it comes to NOTAM modernization and taking in their input. And GA is General Aviation. Yep.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
So thanks for the question, Jeannie. So, the coalition, I can't emphasize enough how awesome it's been to work with this group of really dedicated professionals. So on the coalition, we have ACI, Airport Council International.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't know if you had an
I
audible
did
for
not.
that. And then AAAE, and that one is American Association of Airport Executives. Thank you. And then NASAO, which is National Association of State Aviation Officials.
And just to point out, we have people who are watching. I think we have over 100 on various platforms. And again, recognizing that the language and the acronyms that we use are not widely used by others out there who are watching, who may, however, be technology experts. They may have some input for us. So that's why we're trying very hard to make sure that we're speaking in a way that folks outside of this room and outside of this industry can understand. So.
And then also, Airline Owners and Pilots Association and the National Business Aircraft Association have been really important in this airports region as well, and then also obviously our colleagues within Office of Airports. So what we've been doing is been trying to get the word out about the platform that we're moving to and the cutoff date to move on to that is June of 2020, onto something called NOTAM Manager. And NOTAM Manager is a interface, an origination site that takes a lot of the guesswork out. There's no more free text where you have to figure out what are the all-cap strange acronym that you need to use to make a note that people are supposed to get for safety reasons. This takes the guesswork out. It has drop-down menus, and that partnership that Jose mentioned with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is really important, because the data sets that they have for the services of an airport that include taxiways and runways is real good. And for those small airports that may not be able to afford the survey or may be overwhelmed by it, we can jumpstart that so that we can be completely machine readable over the next 2 years. But getting those people onto NOTAM Manager has been a really important task. So we've done the circuit. I think Jose and several of his friends went and talked at the AAAE conference and the NASEO conference that happened in August. And we've got a campaign ongoing with the Office of Airports where they're going out and personally calling and visiting airports to get them on NOTAM Manager, as well as to help sunset their permanent NOTAMs.
And Nitesh, again, as the Chief Data Officer, what role do you play in trying to support efforts like the NOTAM modernization effort that?
A variety of things. I mean, so folks are sometimes reluctant to change the existing practices. So as Abby said, we have been supporting all the internal conversations about consolidating systems, migrating to a single system, moving to the cloud where appropriate, so that we can change things faster than we were able before. Also, encouraging people to think differently. The way the NOTAMs have always been presented in text form might not be the way folks want to consume it. And so bringing those appropriate discussions together, encouraging people to think differently. This is not unique to NOTAMs, as I said before. So it's a culture of change related to how we access data and consume data that has to pervade everything which we do. Hopefully, we're supporting Abby in getting to those milestones. Look aggressive. So when Jose said by June of next year, there are certain things which are in place, or Abby mentioned that. Internally, that also means that folks have to shift the things which they were doing, funding which had been allocated for other things. So helping support those kind of conversations to say what is important, what's not important. This is clearly important, but we haven't invested in it enough in the past, and so it's encouraging those conversations.
So how do you get input from the users, and what role does that play in the architecture of tools like what we're attempting to do with the NOTAM modernization project
Right.
and NOTAM search?
That's a great point, Jeannie. We don't do enough, so really have to commend the AIS Reform Coalition. I won't expand it. The Aeronautical Information Services Systems Coalition, the industry coalition that has been pushing FAA to make these changes, and Abby for leading the charge on our side, that we don't get input often enough, and we don't have the right mechanisms to get input on all of these things. So we definitely have a lot to do in getting feedback better. We plan to change how some of the other data assets are distributed. So we have folks in the audience who have been working on the system-wide information management and data distribution through that mechanism for a long time. They have a forum for industry and FAA coalition, a teaming work, and I believe they meet on a monthly basis. We need more of that. We need more of the industry participation in how we present information and how the industry would like to consume that.
Can you also talk a little bit about the process, the formal process that the FAA goes through to get input?
Right.
Sometimes it's not as agile, ironically, as we would like it to be.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I guess all large organizations have difficulty, but elephants can dance, I guess. So, everything related to large organizations, any kind of change is hard. The federal government, in engaging with the industry, has to follow certain regulations, and how we actually meet and have conversations with you, we have to follow specific laws and rules. So there are, so that particular process is somewhat challenging. We, as a community, have to get better at how we facilitate those. Those forums have to be formal, they have to be communicated in advance. We need to make sure that all parties interested have been notified. So those things do sometimes slow the process down, but I don't think that has to be an excuse in this day and age in figuring out how to get the feedback more quickly, as long as we have the... we cannot probably, for those who are not from the aviation world, we are not making these changes on GitHub. We are not pushing things.
Why not?
Why not is a good question. So that kind of open mechanism to actually put things out and transparently make changes is not the way we traditionally do things, but that's what we should aspire to, right, Dan? So.
Thank you. And Jose, you've been working very closely with the users of NOTAMs, NOTAMs.
It's a new acronym.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. Can you tell us a little bit about what users want? What are they telling you they need?
I'm going to shed a big light on this. They want data. They want access to the data. And that's one of the reasons, that's probably the main reason why we're here, is how do we better deploy the data to you guys that are the ones that are using that and are creating the state-of-the-art support systems for the flying community. How do we better provide that in the format that is extremely usable and creates more efficiency for you all? So we're here to listen to you all, to say, this is what we would like to see in this format, and then for us to come up with a conduit that is easily accessible to all so that you all can ingest it as best you can. I'm from the South too, y'all.
Oh,
Notice how I
thank you.
use that.
I'm from Boston, by the way.
But that's the main thing that we're trying to do, is listen to our customers' requests and come, meet you halfway and come with, find that sweet spot that we're still able to comply with your request, but do it in like Nitesh said, within the restrictions that we have to comply with. And then the other thing too is, by us now, going back to the NOTAMs, by the NOTAMs now falling under aeronautical information, the policy is now ours. So we got to look at policy to see where we need to update that policy so that it makes sense, that it's got that flexibility that we need, and that it's not as stringent as when the teletype days were around. We have to look at the information and how it's best used while still being safety conscious. So it's a culture change that we're taking on. So we want to listen to you all with big ears. So please share what you need. I'm not saying you're going to get it, what you're asking for all the time, but we're going to listen to you and see how we could work that in, maybe not the way you're asking for it, but in another way that is still usable.
Thank you. Abby, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that today is like super cool for me to see the people that are here in the audience as well as on live stream. I don't know, by show of hands, how many of you were involved in external data access initiative that was around transforming charting data about 3.5 years ago? There's a couple people in the audience. Well, we got the community together in a similar fashion. We didn't live stream, so we've upped our game some, which is cool. But that was like an overwhelming success, because we really asked the public and the app developer community, the community that we really are delighted is here, because we have the usual suspects and we have the unusual suspects here, and it takes all of us. And we did that then, and it was really transformational. And so we're wanting to do that with this data set today. and in the future moving forward, but making this the big benchmark kickoff.
Can I just add something? So the External Data Access Initiative that was back in 2016 to get some of the charting products digitized and made available. We're going to continue to expand on that. So we're going to revamp the data.faa.gov and provide API access to the data assets in a more transparent, more modern fashion. In preparing for this, I went and looked through some LinkedIn comments and so forth. There are folks who kind of complain about the FAA's API design. We definitely are not API design experts. So we really need the community's input in terms of how you would really like to consume the data. Without that feedback, the folks on our side will design it the best way they can. That's not bad intent, but they're not designing APIs on a constant basis for multiple things. You all are consuming APIs from a variety. There is nobody here designing Stripe APIs or Slack APIs. Folks are not at the bleeding edge on API design within the FAA. So we really need your input and help to say, this works, this doesn't work, why? So that we are better informed, so we can do the things which you need us to do.
So API design, that's something that we're looking for input on, Nitesh.
Definitely.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Abby? What are you hearing from users? What are they telling you they want? What are they searching for? What are you hearing?
Well,
from the people in this room and the people who may be watching.
So again, when the AIS Reform Coalition got together with us, Aeronautical Information Services,
thank you,
Reform Coalition, got together. We had our first meeting, I think it was in March, after the shutdown. I don't know if any of you knew the government was shut down, but it actually was. So it took us a hot minute to kind of reconnoiter and get together. But when the group came in, they brought me a list, and we're kind of starting to get into Christmas shopping season. But I swear that Santa had a shorter list than the things that the community needed. So it included, obviously, machine-readable, sortable, filterable, archivable NOTAMs with a single origination point and a single distribution point. And oh, by the way, Congress regulated us, and in our reauthorization said, you shall. And so we're marching. In addition to that, they were looking for authoritative sources. So for example, we have items like the chart supplement. If those of you that are in aviation are familiar with the chart supplement, we had data in something that we call affectionately the back matter. It's a great title. And what the community was telling us was, hey, this isn't consistent with what's on your web page or what's in your automation system. So we've got a big root data cleanup going on. How many of you love temporary flight restrictions?
I don't see a lot of hands.
I'm shocked. Well, moreover, the community told us, help us because we need a single data set and a single process for how people build them and display them so that they're more consumable by applications in the interest of aviation safety, and in efficiency. So we've got huge workflows going on there. Obviously, we're trying to update our platform and get to that machine-readable, sortable, filterable. The community also said, please give us ICAO format, because in ICAO format, it dramatically changes the amount in the United States system where people can sort and filter. By going to the ICAO format, we hope to reduce the noise of NOTAMs probably, well, I won't say 100%, but I will say probably 75 to 80% of the noise will immediately be reduced. So timelines, real quick. In January, we are going to be migrating away from an interface that generally general aviation uses called Pilot Web onto something called NOTAM Search. You're going to get a demonstration on NOTAM Search coming up. Please write down your list of things that you want to see us improve on NOTAM search, because we're going to be taking that feedback for our next iterations. But NOTAM search is a quantum leap from Pilot Web because it allows you to reduce some of the noise. In June of 2020, we're going to be doing the same thing for our automation machine-to-machine readable faces. So it's all coming through federal NOTAM system, allowing all things to be machine readable, sortable, filterable, and archivable. In January of 2021, our field condition, or you aviators in the room, FICON NOTAMs, will be in ICAO format. Since FICON NOTAMs comprise 73% of the NOTAMs that are out there, we think this step is going to make a dramatic difference in sorting through the mess. And then in third quarter, probably September of 2022, we'll be completely ICAO compliant with our NOTAM format. There are regulatory steps that do take time and that we're required to do, certain publications and legal notifications that slows down that process, and that's what the delay is about there.
One last, I think we have time for one last question. What about non-traditional users of the airspaces? We talk about integration. So for example, drone pilots. How do we envision them using NOTAMs in the future? And are we thinking about them as we move through this modernization effort? And that's for anybody.
Go ahead, Abby. I mean, I can give you some quick thoughts. Unless these things are machine readable in a simplified fashion, it's just not going to work for that community, right? All unmanned instances would need the ability to ingest and automatically react to many of these conditions. The other challenge here is that global standards in that case are evolving and emerging, so we'll have to kind of keep that, the whole process would have to be agile. The pace of change there is not going to match what we are expecting.
Jose, do you have a thought about that?
Yeah, the first time I was exposed to that, they're called DROTAMs. And I said, a DROTAM? What is a DROTAM? It's a drone NOTAM. Like Nitesh says, we are looking at finding ways to incorporate what the DROTAM users are going to need. It's something that we weren't anticipating it was going to be as forceful as it is, but hey, they're here, they're not going anywhere, so they're going to be part of our national airspace system. And we just, again, like I said before, we just have to find the best way to incorporate it where the customer is getting what they need to stay safe and keeping the NAS going forward.
And I would just add to that, today in the audience we have people from the Office of UAS Regulatory Branch in our Aviation Safety Group. We're working closely with them because this is a very, DROTAMs, I love that. They have a really important need, because if we can't get that critical safety information into their flight information system, it's a non-starter. Because I don't think that we don't have the same level of control, nor do we need to. And so it's on us to be agile and change. So
I'm getting the cut.
we're getting the shepherd's hook that it's time to move on to our next presentation.
Okay.
So
thank you guys very much.
thank you, everybody.
Okay. Next up, we have Drew Zachary from the Census Bureau. Drew is the director, co-founder of the Opportunity Project, and she is the Senior User Experience Advisor at the Census Bureau. She was a policy advisor at the White House Domestic Policy Council, as well as a senior analyst at the Commerce Data Service. So Drew, thank you very much. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Should I do this one? All right. You there? Okay, I think I'll do this one. Can everyone hear okay? Great. Hello, good morning. I'm Drew, and this one? Okay, can everyone still hear me? Yes, great. I'm here to talk to you about data and how we have tackled some problems at the Census Bureau. I am co-director of our team of odd young people doing user-centered design. Everyone always looks at us kind of oddly, but what we try to do is modernize and improve how we deliver on our mission by engaging with the public, with industry, and people who are just doing things differently so that we can learn how to do them better. So I will first just say, at the Census Bureau, which if people weren't aware, is part of the Department of Commerce, and I know I kind of didn't know what we did at Commerce until I actually worked there, but what connects everything at Commerce is a lot of data and things that people at some point associated with economic activity. And so that includes everything from shipping on boats to patents and trademarks to demographic data on the population. And so at the Census Bureau, we're the largest statistical agency, and in addition to counting the entire United States population every 10 years, I'm sure you've heard a bit about that lately, and also taking really critical measurements on the economy as a whole, businesses across the country. We do about 150 censuses and surveys on everything from housing to healthcare to everything in between. And so we basically have a ton of data, and the data consumers that we interact with are basically everyone. And so that creates a lot of challenges in terms of how we present that information. And again, at Census Open Innovation Labs, we are here to figure out how we can do our mission better. And so the two pillars are to collect data on all of the things that I just mentioned and to disseminate it to everybody who needs it, hopefully really well. So we run a few different programs. A couple of them are public facing, and so, hi, see a few familiar faces in the audience. And I'll talk a little bit about those, as well as some internal facing programs, especially training, which I'll also mention. And the goal of that is that we don't want to be the only people who know how to do what we do. We want everyone to get really good at learning from outside of our own walls about how we can deliver service better to our constituents. So the first thing, four programs that I'm going to talk about briefly. The first one is some user experience research that we have done previously for people at the Census Bureau. And so we worked really closely with our chief data officer a couple of years ago when the Census Bureau was tackling the challenge of creating a new data portal for people to interact with census data. Quick show of hands, raise your hand if you are or have ever been a census data user. Okay, like a handful. That was maybe 10 people for people watching online, and there's a lot more than that in the room. So we have a ton of data. It covers a lot of ground. It's in a lot of different formats, and right now it's kind of everywhere. There's a million different endpoints and places you can find it, and websites and portals and so on. So the challenge was, let's consolidate that into a new platform called data.census.gov, which is going to be, if you're anyone and you want any census data, here's where you go, and it's going to be, this magical Amazon, Google-like search experience where things just pop up and it's exactly what you were thinking of. That's a very difficult user experience to create, as it turns out. So our job was to figure out what people actually want. And so I think what everybody is kind of aware of is that people want data. Yes, people want data. But what data do they want, and how do they want to consume it, and what do they want it to look like? If they're searching for something, what do they search? What do they type into the search bar, and what does the answer look like? What is a satisfying result to them? How do they know when they've gotten the answer that they're looking for? Because that's what we need to provide as people providing the data. And so we went out and we did a bunch of research with data consumers. There were people who already came to Census for data. There were people who probably should be coming to Census for data, even if they were finding their data elsewhere currently. And we asked them about that, and we learned. And so I want to talk about 2 insights that we gained. So the first is, does anyone have any kind of conventional wisdom about their data that there are novice, intermediate, and advanced users? Show of hands. Sure, right? That sounds fine. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. That sounds like a fine way to chop it up. And so if we were going to put technologists and software developers, without looking there, on the spectrum, what category would you put them in? Just call it out. Technologists, right? They have PhDs and stuff. I'm not counting that one. All right, I'm just going to pretend that everyone said advanced, expert. They're smart. They know how to build stuff. They know about data. They're experts, right? So when we're building our developer hub, we're going to build an expert kind of interface for them. We're going to assume that they're experts because, sure, they're smart. They know stuff. And so what we learned is that I think a couple of people here are ringers and said novice, which was correct. That was what we found, is that there are a couple of different questions here. And the conventional wisdom was kind of boxing it into something that was not accurate. The belief was, sure, there's one dimension of how expert you are. In fact, there are many, many. So one of them is, how expert are you in using APIs in general? So technologists and software developers may be expert at that. How expert are you in using census data and knowing what the heck census data is and what it includes? In fact, a lot of them were complete novices. We're doing a Google search for bulk census data download because they kind of knew something about census data and thought that there might be some population data that we had that they could use. And so, in fact, when they got there, they had no idea what they were looking for. They didn't know what they had. And because we were assuming they were experts, we were providing no context on what census data is, what it has. There was no hello world that said, hi, here's what you can find here. Here's how you do it. At a very, kind of rudimentary level, everything was jumping right into, great, you know all about census data. Here's information that you were not looking for and not the information that you wanted. And so the insight that we were able to provide is that on this dimension of experience using census data, a lot of people did not fall where the conventional wisdom said they did. And so we were designing the wrong interface for them and putting the wrong information in front of them. And so hopefully we were able to correct that at least a little bit. And so the other example that I want to provide is the question of how many nines people need for census data. Are people familiar with that concept of how, for an API, for example, how often does your API need to run? 99% of the time, 99.999% of the time, something else? How good does your API have to be at running? So what do you guys think that people said to that? How many nines? Call it out. 3, 4. All infinity nines. And so when we were designing these interviews, our chief data officer really, really wanted the answer to that question. And we were kind of saying, it's an interview, it's not a survey, do we have to? And we said, okay, fine, we'll ask the question. So the answer, trick question, turned out to be, we don't think about it like that. And so when we really unpacked that, it was like, well, I can tell you, there wasn't an answer because the developers and the technologists that we were talking to who relied on Census APIs were saying, we're going to rely on it. If it's 75% of the time up, we're still going to use it. And we're just going to work around in other ways to adjust to how often it's up. So the number of nines in your runtime is not a factor. And so that kind of, I think what's important about that is that the way that you're thinking about how people consume your data can be totally different from reality. And so even unpacking those assumptions about how people, yes, people use your data. Then what do they do with it? What is the actual workflow that they use to translate that data into value? And understanding that is really important to what we present. Because we could have spent, millions of dollars and hundreds of hours getting to 5 nines, and nobody would have cared. Maybe you would have gotten a few less complaints, but it's not going to change the number of people that rely on your API. And so insights like those from the back end of how people actually work with your data and how they think about what you're presenting to them is really critical to spending your time and money wisely. So a second program that I want to talk about is called the Opportunity Project. Quick show of hands, I'm not optimistic. Anybody familiar? Dan Morgan. Okay. So this is a technology accelerator program that we run. And the concept is we have a lot of data. We can build a few data tools to present that data. But if we engage industry and the private sector to build things with the data, they will build many more and many cooler products than we ever could or should ourselves as government. And so we run technology development sprints. In an accelerator-like model, a period of about 3 months, we engage with dozens of companies and they build awesome products with our data. And so I won't talk too much about this program now. I would definitely encourage everyone to visit our website, which is opportunity.census.gov. I think there's a link in the slides later. Or you can just Google it, where you can find all the products. Over 100 products will have been created by the end of this year from companies, maybe some that are represented here today, like IBM, Cisco, LinkedIn, Fitbit, Airbnb, MIT, University of Southern California, small businesses, startups, and the products are awesome. And they're all built with federal open data. That's the crux of it, is take our data and give it to consumers in a way that is useful. So what I want to mention here is that by doing that, we are actually able to learn a lot from the data consumers. And so, you do interviews, you can do user experience research, but having that kind of direct interaction on a weekly basis with data consumers who are really in the middle of a task, who are trying to use that data to solve a problem, to build a product, that is really incredibly valuable information on what people are looking for, how it actually works in practice, what's on their Santa Claus wish list, and so on. Oh, here's our website. A bunch of products. And so what we are doing with that information, and this is the third project, is we're trying to build a data curation hub or system, catchy name, TBD, to help people use federal data really well. And the part of that life cycle that we're targeting is data discovery. The hardest part of interacting with federal data can be figuring out what data you actually can use to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So if you think about starting from, okay, I want to do something, this is my goal, this is the project, to great, the project is done. The data part, data discovery, actually finding what you need can really, make or break whether someone is able to use federal open data. And so what you see here, it's scrolling a little bit quickly, so I'll just pause for a second. So over the years of the Opportunity Project, it's been around for 9 cycles, we have tried every way of presenting data to technologists and developers and industry. So we've tried just a spreadsheet. That was fine. It's all been fine. But I'll get to what actually works really well. We've tried a spreadsheet. We've tried a data.gov collection. We have ultimately found that what works the best is putting the right information in a really simple format with contact information. And having a human being who's an expert in the data, who is there, in GitHub or in Slack and is ready to answer a question and just help you find the data that you need. And so that is what we've been providing. So I'll just say, I think that what we've really learned is that this factor of data discovery is really critical, and it's what a lot of people skip over. Just putting out the data is not enough. The devil is really in the details of how you present it and help people find it. And so really briefly, I mentioned training. We are also running a human-centered design training, which we would like to make available to others. So if you're interested, please ask me questions about that. And the idea is that we don't want to be the only people who are doing this work. We want to spread that knowledge and skill set across the Bureau. Okay, and finally, if people are going to be interested in learning more about this, we're having a demo day on December 10th, and we would like to invite everyone, so I'll leave this up in case people want to take a picture of the RSVP link. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Drew. That was awesome and inspiring to think about. And by the way, we're sending people to Demo Day to learn from you. And thank you for the invitation as government to government to learn from each other. That's how we keep the United States the amazing place it is. So in the next hour, you're going to hear from people that are using our NOTAM data and our aeronautical information data right now in applications as a little inspiration for what's possible right now. How many of you, by show of hands, because I don't have a Slido question for this, know that the Department of Defense uses our federal NOTAM system? Oh, wow. So in the room, for those of you live streaming, you can't see it, almost everybody raised their hand. That would be correct. And they have really different results for that. I'd like to welcome to the stage Jim Mills. He is our manager of the Department of Defense NOTAM system and is responsible for DoD aeronautical information distribution for all DoD pilots. This includes all the forces. They develop DoD NOTAM's policy and procedures in direct support of military flight operations worldwide. Representing the headquarters Air Force and the DoD and international agencies responsible for establishing standardization and worldwide aeronautical information. I'd also like to personally thank you, Jim. You've been an amazing supporter of the NOTAM modernization system and a wonderful partner. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Mills.
Thank you very much. Well, I might as well quit while I'm ahead. That was a pretty darn good presentation there. So any questions? No, just kidding. Give a little background. First of all, sometimes I talk too fast because I'm from Pennsylvania and I grew up outside of, Lancaster in the Amish country, and we speak Pennsylvania Dutch. So if I speak too fast, the gentleman in the back holds the signs up, tell me to slow down. I'll slow down. So real quick, I'll give you a 5-minute overview of what we have done in the DoD side of the house. Then I will let my senior developer, Mindal, jump up here and give you the live demo. Show you what have we done with FAA and NGA and partnerships to date, and then where are we going in the future. Before we jump to that, quick show of hands. So how many, let's just start with how many NOTAM creators do we have in the room? How many people actually create NOTAMs out there in the world? Anybody? NOTAM creator? Handful? Maybe? Some? How many FMers, flight managers, or dispatchers do we have in the room? Good handful, okay. And then how many pilots do we have in the room? Okay. So luckily, I had the great opportunity of spending 28 years in the Air Force as a consumer of NOTAMs. I was going to retire and go raise cattle in Texas, but the general said, no, you're going to come in and fix the NOTAM system. So here I am, been doing this for 10 years and been loving it. So as you can see on the slide up here, it was a partnership, it was teamwork. So about 2011-ish, 12-ish, I guess FAA came out with the NOTAM manager system. The pilot bill of rights, like Abby talked about, said, yes, one in, one out. It said, and I'm paraphrasing language, focus on doing some TFR work also. And I think it said, parts source and make it compatible like the Department of Defense is. So we're going to show you what we did in the DoD side here in a second, and how we got feedback from the field to make this happen. But it couldn't have been done, not only with FAA, but we had to have the flying community. So how we developed our system and application, we went out to all the flight standards. AFSA flight standards, USAID, the Army, and then also the OpNav folks. And the pilots designed this. So it wasn't Jim Mills sitting behind a desk saying, well, back in the day when I was flying, that's what I wanted. Nah, it was the current operators giving input. And then the really important piece, and I think that's the theme of the summit, is the data piece. Partner with NGA. FAA has already discussed with that. NGA is our data provider They provide our data sources for us, DAFIF, what it's used, because we have to use worldwide information because we are worldwide flight operations. So let's see if this works. Perfect. So what we focused on, you can see our goals. I'm not going to read them verbatim. We took it one step higher. It's not just NOTAMs, it's AIS, and that's what Abby's already emphasized here. The pilots went a one-stop shop, at least in the DoD side, a one-stop shop for all information they need to do the mission planning, flight planning, and execute the mission. So that's what the portal provides for our DoD aviators, that one-stop shop. You can see the enhancements there. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on what they all are because Min's going to demo those. But the bottom line, it enables the pilot, he or she can take their flight plan, enter their ICAO flight plan verbatim, and get the exact route of NOTAMs with the parameters that Min will talk about here for that mission. And it's expandable, it's tailorable, sortable, all those ables. It's all the abilities there. How's that sound? Boy, I just made a new word, didn't I? Okay, what's that guy with the sign to tell me to get off stage now? No, just kidding. So, what we're trying to do here, of course, it's a mobile-enabled EFB, business intelligence. That's where we're going to the future, make it device-friendly because everybody carries a device nowadays. And we're migrating to the middle cloud. We are required by our CIO's office through DISA to go to the DISA cloud. Now, we host on the NIPRNet side, so that's a little bit interesting sometimes, working those gateways with the internet and NIPRNet. We have partnered with FAA to make that work. Then we also go higher on Zipper, but I'm not going to talk about that today. I'd have to shoot you. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Next slide. Oh, it's me. Okay. So here's where we are. So Min's going to get ready and come up here. I'll let him start plugging in. For March 16, 2015 was our first deployed location. It was Randolph Air Force Base. We currently have over 301 locations total worldwide. Out of that, 50% of those are outside the NAS, believe it or not. So that's a lot that are other parts of the world, the Pacific region, European region heavy, Middle East, definitely heavy in the Middle East. And those folks over there are putting NOTAMs out for those air bases, Incirlik, Turkey, Aviation, so on and so forth. So that's where we are. That's what we're doing. I think I spent enough time talking. I'm going to let Min, if you're ready to rock and roll, do the demo and enjoy the show. I think you'll like it.
Hope everyone can hear me. I have a lot to go through, so I'm just going to blast through these slides and demonstration real quick. If you have additional questions, we can talk later after. So this is the DoD NOTAM portal. We recently migrated all our queries to the external, so you don't need an account to log in or to do anything on there. I already pre-populated this just to save some time. But you can brief this. You click brief. This is what you will see. Again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to walk through it, but we can actually demo it live again. Again, this is on slido.com if you have any questions or comments. So this is the results of the DoD NOTAM portal briefing response. As you can see here, first glance, it looks like every other query response, got a list of NOTAMs, but as you look at it more closely, you'll see that we assess a prioritization to the NOTAM. And we sort it by similar to what flight service and everyone else does, departure, arrival, alternate, and route. And then let's look at the Dover airfield. As you can see here, all the pertinent NOTAMs that we assign through talking to our pilots and our airfield managers, it's just not a runway closure or taxiway closure that go up to the top. There's other important information within the NOTAM that, based on our domain expertise, we take that, we assign, for example, a numerical value to it, and then those gets put up front. So whenever we do a briefing, the pertinent stuff, the warning, the cautions, the fuel conditions, those will just automatically go up top. If you sort, for instance, by your typical NOTAM, you get, effective date. Well, your runway closure might have been all the way on the bottom and you never see it. And the other thing that's different with DoD NOTAMs, we're able to filter things out. So if we don't like certain aspect of the NOTAMs, we can filter it out, and you can see that tower NOTAMs are now gone. We also have graphical NOTAMs. What's graphical NOTAMs? Graphical NOTAMs, because we ingest data from FNS, it has geospatial information. So we're able to take that geospatial information and map it. There's multiple ways of mapping it. We have gone through multiple iterations, and what we settle on is something that looks like this. I'll give it a second to load. As you can see here, this is Patuxent River. Here's all the graphical NOTAMs that currently exist on Patuxent River. Again, we only draw, based on expertise, we only draw those that we assign important categories for. Because if you look at digital NOTAM, the data comes in, and every NavAid, every IDLS will have, for instance, a geospatial information. If you plop all of that on here, it'll be a mess, and you can't see anything. One thing I want to point out is if you look on right here, you see there's 4 NOTAMs pointing to the same piece of land, let's put it that way. And it's awfully confusing, but probably not a lot of people here know that. Just because a taxiway might be closed, well, it's not the whole taxiway that's closed. It could be just a partial closure of a taxiway. But the data you get back, guess what? It's the whole taxiway. So there's no way for us from a user standpoint to depict that. So we have to depict the whole taxiway, and you have to read into the NOTAMs for that. The other thing that's important with our NOTAMs, you can sort, again, everything here. For instance, even if you sort by effective date, the pertinent stuff will stay on top. Doesn't matter what you do, the rest of the other NOTAMs will stay in the order, but the pertinent stuff always stay on top. But we defaulted to a criticality. We can get weather for that location. One thing that's unique to us is when we brief, whether it's online or in the military, a lot of time it's you have to paper the crew. So when you paper the crew, let that run, you get the same display that you would online. So there's no transition. Oh, I'm just going to get a list of NOTAMs. You get your NOTAMs, you get your graphical. There you go. Everything is there. It's dynamic. It's changing. We can link to this. We have actually APIs for right now just for location. So you can go out and get a location briefing, and it'll bring this up based on a certain 1 or up to 50 location. I'll show you that in a separate demo. But that's the gist of the DoD NOTAM portal and our briefing and our approach to AXIM data. And here's all the queries based on our feedback from our pilots from going to the flight school, asking them what they need, what they want us to provide. Those are all the stuff that we migrate over from DIND and so forth. Next, I want to take you to what DoD is going to be doing in the near future for addressing TFRs, SUAs, and addressing the segmentation problem that we have with the digital NOTAM. We had graphical NOTAM back in 2009. We implement this in 2015, and it's now literally 5 years later, we still have a data problem. So we have our pilots can't wait. I mean, if the graphical NOTAM is not complete, it's not intuitive, we have to find a better solution, a different solution, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to take you to a slightly different site that we own and operate. And a lot of the technology that we use here, we bring it into DoD NOTAMs. So let's take this flight. Let's brief it real quick. So feedback, again, more NOTAMs, similar to what you've seen with DoD, highlighting fields that's coming to DoD next, icons depicting the type of NOTAM, prioritization of NOTAMs, en route information, navigation information linking to FAA and so forth. Here's something a little different. I'm going to quickly just change. Here's a link to the DoD system interface to pull NOTAMs. This is something that's totally new for us. We can create graphical NOTAMs on the fly. Okay. So here's a typical graphical NOTAM that we created. As you can see, when I highlight it over, you see the shape changes and the color gets highlighted. We can create those on the fly. For instance, let's look at Allentown. It's one of those sites that don't have any, so we'll just go ahead and create some. Again, this is still in prototype form. So let's take this one. And it's taxiway E between runway 24 and taxiway C. Right? So we can find that. That's like right there. Use that. It's rudimentary, just something quick. Let's see, there. And let's close that polygon. Let's save it, and let's submit. Okay. And voila, you got your taxiway, graphical NOTAMs. What can this be used for? Construction notice, creating them on the fly. We did that yesterday with Chicago. Here's a Chicago construction notice from the FAA. If I load up ORD, and these are the ones that we created yesterday, literally within a few minutes. So that's what you can apply the technology for. It's rudimentary, but it does the job of solving our segmentation problem, and it's provide a consistent outlook and depiction based on a native image that everyone knows, the airfield diagram. So that consists of my briefing. Again, a lot of information here. Additional questions, we can target them later. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, DoD. It's really great that that was a collaborative effort with FAA, and kudos for all the work that you've done for the warfighters. So now we're going to turn to people that are helping our general aviation pilots, particularly every day, and that's our colleagues at Leidos Flight Service. They have a cool presentation about what they're doing with their pilot portal. So please help me in welcoming Senior System Safety Engineer Joe Daniel to the stage. Here you go.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? All right. I'm Joe Danielli, and I'll talk to you a little bit today about the pilot web portal that Leidos has. I'll show you a demonstration. Actually, we've been over the past, 50 years or so, we've been catering to the flight service station specialist. They were the ones giving the briefings, so that's who we catered to. We're shifting, we're still taking care of our specialists, but what we're doing is now we're updating and making our pilot web portal and access to NOTAMs better, easier, faster for the pilot community. If you have any questions afterwards, I'll be hanging around, so just hit me up. Like I said, we have several platforms that we use or that we disseminate NOTAMs that pilots, specialists. The first one is Flightscapes. That's our FS21 system, and that's been around since about 2005. The NOTAM search, it's not a NOTAM search, but it's the pilot web portal that we have that allows us, the pilots, to access our system. The mobile web, it just renders on a laptop, iPad, or an iPhone. And third-party web services, third-party web vendors, what we'll do is we will make these products available to third-party vendors. Anybody who needs the information that we have in our system, we will allow other vendors to access. AOPA, for example, accesses our data, our flight plan information, and our briefings. We also have an interactive map that displays TFRs. It also displays a lot of other things, but specifically NOTAM specific, it's TFRs and UAS or UAS NOTAMs. I'm going to go through the different ways to access the NOTAMs and our filtering capabilities. Okay, good. So just click this. Maybe we'll do it. Okay, try a different browser. May I try something else? So it did work yesterday. Maybe this is a test. Okay, so the focus of the demonstration was going to be how we, sorry.
Why don't we just take a quick break and then resume?
Sure, that's fine.
So as this is live, we'll just take a quick 15-minute break right now, but let's be prompt. Universal standard cell phone time. Let's see. Of course, I have to put my reading glasses on. Thank you. 10:40 cell phone time. Be back in your seats or be back on the web. This gives everybody time for biology and refills. All right. Thanks.